Okay, this video concerns an often talked about subject when it comes to RPGs, whether they be LARP or whether they be tabletop, and that's the subject of immersion. Now, as far as I'm concerned, immersion is when people are on the edge of their seats, not worrying about any OOC stuff, but they're purely concentrating on what's going on in the game. I think most people would agree that getting immersed in a game is a good thing. After all, why do we play RPGs, whether they be fantasy, sci-fi, horror, pulp action, or whatever your favourite genre should happen to be, at all, if we're not seeking to leave behind the real world for a few hours? However, there are various different levels of immersion that can be found, sometimes even in the same game. In fiction, it's not possible for an author to continually keep ramping up the suspense, the tension, or the horror throughout an entire book. An audience will become desensitized to it after a bit, and any sort of dramatic impact will be lost. In RPGs, it's not possible, in my opinion, to keep people on the edge of their seats and 100% immersed all of the time. Most people I know play games to relax, so it's generally a good time to have less tense scenes in a game to allow people this chance. It also means that when you do start ramping up the tension and drawing the players in, it will have more impact because of the contrast with the more relaxed scenes. So, how do we ramp up this level of immersion in a game? One of the simplest and most obvious ways, but one that can be easy to forget in the heat of the moment, is the title of this video: Show, Don't Tell. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean is that the world we attempt to portray in an RPG is a world that exists for all the characters' senses, in the same way as the real world. Now, obviously, we don't describe what all the senses are receiving all of the time, or we'd again have a problem with desensitization, and we'd be just constantly bombarding the players with too much information. However, ignoring the other senses entirely, besides sight, is robbing the GM's arsenal of a valuable tool to hook the players into a game. When an important factor of the game comes into play, try not to use game speak or mention stats, characteristics, etc. Try and keep your descriptions evocative and compelling, involving all of the characters' senses. This will draw the players in and get them thinking more in an IC mindset. For example, in a recent God Machine Chronicle game that I ran, my players visited the apartment of a crazy cat lady, and I described it in a way similar to this. As you approach the flat, you can hear the mewling chorus from the ragged furred felines that crowd the corridor and line the floors as you step closer to the door. Pushing it open, you are met by the stench of ammonia and pulped cardboard rising from the numerous overflowing litter trays dotted around the stained carpet. Squatting in the centre of the room is a wizened old figure, huddled and hunched beneath a rough blanket, her breath wheezing shallowly. Now, how much more evocative of the setting and what is going on is that, rather than me simply saying, the apartment is full of cats with an old woman sitting on a sofa in the middle of the room? It's always more interesting to try and build mental pictures that are very graphically descriptive and compelling. After all, there's a reason why pretty much every well-selling RPG book includes decent artwork, and that probably about 99% of RPG reviews mention the quality, or lack thereof, of artwork in books. In real life, we perceive the world through a multitude of senses, and in an RPG world, so would our characters. Next time you're writing or ad-libbing a scene, after you've described the visual elements, think about whether you can throw in a description of the way something smells. How does something feel? What's the temperature like? Are there any sounds that the player character can hear? I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at how something so simple can add so much to your game sessions. Well, that's about it for this video. Let me know what you think in the comments box below. If you have any questions, perhaps you have some tips for improving immersion or creating evocative descriptions. I look forward to reading what you've written.